Hey Amarillo, I'm Skylar Gallup, and you are listening to Hey Amarillo. It's the interview podcast featuring some of the most interesting people and stories of Amarillo, Texas. We record each week at the beautiful offices of Rosenbach Contractors. They are experts in high-end design and construction, creating stunning and functional spaces through both new builds and remodels. Today's guest is Donnie Trammell. Donnie's a farmer and rancher and has been all his life. He grew up in the sale barn with his dad. He runs Trammell cattle now. His son's family runs Tir Bluen Farms, which provides beef, chicken, pork, and more to what is now 6 locations of Rancher's storefront in the Panhandle, which they also own and operate. Donnie's story is the story of our culture, this place, its incredible beauty, and its ruthless challenges. It is literally what sustains us, as long as we sustain it. And I really, really enjoyed this interview. Here's Donnie. Donnie Trammell, welcome to the Hey Amarillo podcast.
Thank you.
I'm excited to learn more about what you and your family do, but we'll begin with where did you grow up? Were you from around here?
Yeah, I was born and raised here in Amarillo, in the Amarillo area. You know, graduated Canyon High School, went to WT back when it was WT. I never did make it through there, but I enjoyed that though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I grew up here in this area.
What did your family do? Did you grow up on a ranch?
Yeah, so always in the cattle industry. So we're old sale barn people, like the Amarillo Livestock Auction.
Yeah.
You know, I probably started going there when I was 5 years old. You know, and kind of grew up there. No, I worked there for years. You know, I had a uncle that was there about 60 years, and my dad was there about 60 years, and they even had a brother that was there way back then too. So we grew up in that area, you know, and always cattle and taking care of cattle. You know, that's about all I ever really know is cattle until we got into all this.
That's really cool. I was thinking this morning about this conversation, and it is even more so to hear that like all of your family has always done this. Mm-hmm. That yours is like the picture of Amarillo's culture, of like the Texas Panhandle culture. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, you know, I guess everybody thinks about Amarillo, they think about boots and spurs, hats and boots and spurs.
And you got them.
Yeah.
That's fun. I also I love a sale barn. It's such a fun, interesting experience to sit in there and watch all that happen. Even if you, and I did not grow up on a ranch. I'm from further south, so you know everything I knew was farmers. So I know very little about it, but it's so cool to watch.
Yeah, you know, the sale barn's got its whole different culture in itself. You know, the different buyers, and everybody has their same seat they sit in every week, and you know, so I mean, every one of them's like that. They're really interesting.
That's so cool. So you guys grew up with land and cattle and yeah.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Was there ever a time, like when you went to WT, that you weren't going to do this? Like, was there ever a, you know, I'm going to go something?
Oh, yeah. You know, I guess I started WT and started in, you know, the agricultural area. You know, and then I guess I moved to Arkansas and went to Harding School of Biblical Studies for 2 years. You know, and we ended up going to India and stuff like that. So I guess I just decided I'd go there that area. You know, did that, preached for about 6 years, and then I went back into agriculture. You know, just fell right back into it. And
so your rebelling was to go to Bible school.
Yeah, I guess so. You know, I never expected that, but you know, it kind of got led that way.
Yeah. So tell me about when did you kind of like come back and get back into operations?
Yeah, so I guess, you know, pretty sure I got married in '88. I'd have to ask Brenda. You know, I think we've been married about 37 or 8 years. Something like that, and it was before I married her, you know, kind of got back into it. You know, the McNeil Ranch out there towards Wayside, you know, lived out there and worked for them. You know, that was a really good experience, and learned a lot out there. So that's really just kind of went back into that, and small business back into sale barns and then outside cattle, and pretty much that's what I was going to do the rest of my life till we really started ranching with cows and calves. That turned into a big deal.
Explain to me the difference.
Yeah, so outside cattle, so inside cattle, you're thinking about a feed yard. They're inside, they're getting ready for the packer. Outside cattle are where they're weighing 300 to 500 to 600 pounds, and then they grow outside on grass or wheat, and that kind of rolls back the price because it's cheaper out there. Mm-hmm. And then they're ready to go to a feed yard. Mm-hmm. So lots of different investors invest in cattle and put them outside. So all the cattle outside that you see, and even ranches, that's outside cattle.
Okay.
Cow calves. Because we didn't do the feed yard, because sale barn cattle pretty much, once they go through the sale, they're going outside. They're going to grass or weed or somewhere like that. The bigger ones might go to the feed yard, so I got hired to take care of all kinds of people's cattle. I drove an old 72 Ford pickup pulling a trailer for years. It's sitting in front of the facility. Everybody sees it and recognizes it, but that's what I did, and that's what led to the cow-calf business too. To work for some pretty big investors, and ended up in New Mexico, with some yearlings. You know what a yearling is?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, so a yearling operation, and that led to the cow-calf operation because he started retiring. So I was able to lease land, and then we bought a place over there.
Where did you buy a place?
San Juan, New Mexico.
Okay. And do you still have that land?
Yes.
Yeah. And is it yearling or
It's
cow-calf?
Cow-calf.
Nice.
Cow-calf operation.
Do you guys ranch up here as well?
Well, I used to do a lot of farming up here.
Oh.
So I didn't farm to raise the crop. I farmed to graze cattle.
Yeah.
So that's what we did forever. This country's changed a whole lot since then. Houses built all over the place. So we really don't do much over here anymore. It's mostly over there in New Mexico.
I see. So talk to me about Tir Bluen. When did that begin? And yeah, what was the beginnings of that?
Yeah, so that's my son Justin. He started that. He's always had a great vision, and he named it that. I said, "You sure you want to name it that?" But anyway,
What is the name from?
It's from a feather. Yeah, that's what I never knew, but it's from a feather. But he did chickens, and then he raised cooney hogs, and then some sheep, a hair sheep, not a wool sheep.
Okay.
And then so that was his operation. That's kind of what led to the facility also, because you need to do something with those animals and have a value-added product.
Yeah. And is that a processing facility?
Yes.
And you guys own that?
Yeah, Panhandle Meat Processing.
Okay. So talk to me about kind of like what the top to bottom the business is that you guys operate.
Yeah, so it's a fully integrated project. So you might think of 4 different businesses actually. So you have the Tir Bluen, you have Trammell cattle, which would be me and my wife, and then you have the processing facility. And then you have rancher storefronts, which are the retail outlets for all that. Focusing on local, it's all about local.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons. So the way that I first encountered you guys is I used to get when y'all were delivering, when Tir Bluen was delivering over at Salt in Wolflin. Mm-hmm. I used to pick up chickens from y'all.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm interested to talk to you about is, from my perspective, what I've seen is like a resurgence of local meat operations, and I really like that because of the local aspect of it. Certainly, that it's supporting families that live in our communities. Also, that you have like more control over what you're ingesting, and and there's kind of some of those like hormones and all of that stuff, and all of that. And so I'm interested to hear your experience. How many years have you been in cattle operations? You said you were 6?
Yeah, my whole life.
Your whole life, yeah.
Like 30 years ago, I was managing a feed yard. We pulled cattle out and had them harvested and then dry aged and delivered within a 100-mile radius of Amarillo. we was ahead of our time back then. But now I'm more in control of all that and own the cattle. And, people just got really concerned about where their food comes from, the quality and the safety. And that's fortunately what we can provide. Full traceability, every package traceable back to each animal. Like everything we do is like that. And I never knew that there'd be such a high demand for it, but there has been such a high demand for quality like that.
What makes it, the price of meat, of course, is really high right now. Is that something that you guys experience, in increase in what you guys need to turn out a product? Like, what is that?
Yeah, so we could get really involved in the financial part of it, but you might think of it, as, paying for the animal that's ready for harvest, and then that animal goes into the cooler and ages. Well, then you got to pay the facility for processing that animal, and then you have to keep the stores up. So you have all those costs involved. And not only that, but, it takes 2.5 years to even get to the harvest point.
Mm-hmm.
So you have all that time, which time equals money, put into all that, and the price just gets higher, but, everybody says it's high, but look at a bag of potato chips.
Yeah.
Yep. Anything like that, look at a meal at Allsup's, might cost you $20 for,
Totally.
Just a Coke and chips and a drink.
Yeah. Everything is expensive.
Yeah. So, but the safety and the quality, we'll go out and buy a high dollar cup of coffee, but if you think about really feeding your family something nutritious and safe, then it's not really that high.
Well, and that's exactly why I started buying my chicken from you guys was, it's not in my family's budget to, locally source every single thing that goes into our bodies, but I cook a lot of chicken. So it was like, that's one thing that, I can prioritize spending some more money on to know that, that you guys family raised it.
All right.
Which is good. How has, over your life ranching, how have you seen things change?
So all the ranching operations are a little bit different, I think what I've seen, of course, the price of cattle has changed, the price of land's changed. Mm-hmm. Everybody talks about how many farmers and ranchers are going out of business, so we've seen that. We've seen big corporations come in, and lots of land bought up by foreign companies. I think those are really big changes. And that the older generation's going out and there's not many young people to take over. So I'm not sure where all that's headed. I hope that we can, everybody can stay hooked and young people will get involved and, be able to do something. But that's a big thing, the amount of land just disappears. Look around Amarillo, how much it's changed over the years. Bushland used to be a small community and now look what it is.
What has kept y'all's family from selling to corporate operations?
Well, I'm not interested in that at all. The whole idea with beef and pork and lamb and chicken is putting the value-added product and putting it in front of every consumer, because that's just critically important, to people. We have people tell us all the time, like our kids got to go off some medications because they've been eating your beef, and then stories like that. I don't ever put them out there, but we hear that all the time.
I had a guy on whose family was like 5th generation farmers out in Umbarger, and he stopped because his dad kind of said go do something else. Mm-hmm. And so is that because you've got grandkids? I know that you have your son. Do you have other children?
Yeah, I got 2 more daughters, 3 actually.
Okay.
And grandkids.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see them get involved as time goes on. It's a really hard business because you're based on the weather and then how much money it costs for all that, and then there's so much risk involved. I always make a joke that, that Dave Ramsey could never own cattle because you might go out there the next morning and he just lost $1,500.
He wouldn't like that. That's very funny. Yeah,
But there's so much risk in it.
Yeah. If you're starting or growing a small business and need some cash, let me tell you about Amarillo Venture Capital. They are a Hey Amarillo sponsor. They're locally owned, and what makes them different is they don't just invest in businesses. They invest in people. So whether you need $5,000 or $50,000, they offer flexible asset-based loans, often with funding in a week or less. And it's not just the money. They can connect you with their local network of legal, accounting, and business resources to help you succeed. Check them out at amarilloventurecapital.com. I'm thinking about, if you run cattle, like, have you guys been affected by the screwworm?
No, I mean,
you haven't?
I mean, personally, I think that's blown up a little bit. We dealt with it way back, in the 60s and 70s. I don't know what all there is to believe anymore about all that stuff and all the stories. I know it affects the markets terrible.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much there is in that, but we have a lot of really good medications that can take care of that. So I'm not just terribly concerned about it with what we have.
That is so interesting to hear that perspective, because I stay real close to the news, and that's not what they're saying around here.
Mm-hmm.
That it's this huge, terrible deal, and.
Yeah, I mean, the screwworm is a bad deal. Hopefully the government will get after it and eradicate it just like they did years ago. I mean, back in the 60s and 70s, we were little bitty kids, but, we'd see our dad rope cattle all the time and doctor them,
Yeah.
with that. And we would see them, we'd be processing cattle, and so you could see the screwworm on them.
Yeah.
Or in their horns or whatever.
Yeah.
And, it was a bad deal.
Yeah. So talk to me about the Tir Bluen Farm. I'm on their newsletter, and they send pictures out of the kids taking care of the chickens and stuff. So yeah, talk to me about that. I think it's just lovely, and also really good marketing.
Yeah, Justin's really good at that. He's always had that big vision, and he's got a place of his own where he can raise all that. And he's been so concerned about the food quality and safety. He was like with the farmers market in Canyon for over 10 years. The president there and stuff.
Oh, cool.
And so that was a big deal for him, being able to sell it that way. Because whenever he started chicken, I was like, are you sure you want to do that? Just think about, if somebody gets sick. And he wasn't concerned about that because he knew how safe it was. But being able to raise them like that, hogs, chicken, sheep, that's a big deal. And you can do it on a lot less land than you can cattle, and manage them and manage the grazing. So and all three of them work together with each other, the chickens, hogs, and sheep.
Oh, really? In what way?
Well, in all the grazing, the sheep are going to eat different things than the pigs do. The chickens are going to come along and clean up what they need to. Chickens are good for ticks and insects and, all kinds of bugs that are around. And then grow in a garden too. Chickens are good for that. They really help as long as they don't get your blooms. But yeah, I thought, we want to see all that increase, and that's a manageable thing to be able to increase production with all that.
How many storefronts are there?
We have 7 counting the facility.
Really? That's awesome. I mean, I just think it's really I think it's really cool that our community recognizes the value of. I actually think Amarillo very much supports local businesses,
Mm-hmm.
and so it makes sense that whenever we talk about our food production, because it is such an agricultural area, but I think it's really cool that our community supports 7 storefronts. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's kind of like Whitney said. My daughter-in-law is about moving into their neighborhood. Anytime the housewife can avoid one more stop, or that stop's closer, then that's real convenient. Of course, we're all about convenience.
Yeah.
And it sounds big having 6 stores, but we deliver out of the facility 6 days a week, because that's the big hub where everything's aged and production goes on. So, we're the vision that we can see. Maybe, we're going to try to open another one here for long, and some people are saying we need to be in Dumas and Lubbock and Hereford and different places like that. So I don't know. We'll see how everything goes. The support's been amazing, with the customer base. That's just wonderful.
That is really cool. It's sure been dry up here.
It is.
Over your lifetime in this industry, how have you seen the weather change? How does that affect your operations?
Yeah, so with all the livestock, you have to manage your grazing. When you do have rain and you do get good grass, you need to manage that instead of just graze it all off. So either different paddocks or different fields, just manage it, and the next rain's great, but watch for the next drought too. So you can be ready for it and not have to just sell off everything. Because this country's just like that. 2010 started a 4-year drought. It was terrible.
Yeah.
It was worse than this last one we've been through. So it's just management on all that. It seemed like when I was a kid we had a lot more tornadoes. We had them every year, but we haven't had a lot of that, thank goodness.
Yeah, I've read that Tornado Alley has moved north and east.
Yeah, that's what I saw too, yep. Lots of hail, I remember baseball-sized hail years ago.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah, that was terrible. But I've seen the weather change. I'm not sure where it's going, but, we just have to look ahead and prepare for all that. Just management.
Well, and I think it's the generational knowledge like you guys, are preserving, to have kind of the wisdom to, look forward to the next rain, but the next drought as well, And I think, I think it's cool to think about families like yours that are preserving and continuing that knowledge being passed,
Yeah, it's critical for food supply. Do you want to count on the big guys, or do you want to support the local, local agriculture, local jobs? Steady food supply. I tell people, I say, as long as we have electricity, we can cut beef. And we have a great big old generator, so, just say something happened with the electrical grid, we still need to be able to put out a product.
Do you think that do you have any how old are your grandkids first?
Don't get me on all
I just mean like range.
Yeah, range.
Youngest is what? Oldest is what?
I guess one of them would be 16 years old.
Okay, cool.
And then the youngest, 3.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So some of them are old enough to kind of be looking at what they're going to do. Does it look like they're going to stay in the family business, or?
I think some of them will.
Oh.
Yeah. They're outside people. They love being outside and animals. That's what they grew up with. And you might catch them going outside early in the morning. But just being around livestock. We handle lots of horses over the years. Horses go great with cattle and all that, and so that's a really big deal. I used to be able to take my kids all the time with me, and when they were little bitty, and ride in the pastures and gather cattle and do all that. It's a real blessing being able to do that when they were that young.
It's perfect.
But it just takes so many hours to do all that. We used to leave at, with the trailers full of horses at 6 in the morning and get back at 7 or 8 at night. So when the kids were little bitty, I didn't see them all the time, but they got big enough to ride a horse, well, they could go.
They'd go with Dad.
Yeah. So that was always good, So I can see them staying hooked with that. It's so hard to get away from that lifestyle because it's so good.
Yeah. I think that the cowboy culture has become like very popular with shows like Yellowstone and the 4-6s and all that stuff. What do you think about all that?
There's only a couple things they get right in those movies, but that's kind of interesting watching that.
What do you think they get right?
Talking about how much money you can lose. They can certainly get that right. And how hard it is to keep that ranch, and because everything else trying to take it all over. So they got that right.
What do you think they get wrong?
Cattle, you know, you can just tell they don't know cattle. You know, the way that they handle them, gather them and all that, you know. You know, if you're a decent hand, you can handle lots of cattle by yourself. You know, it's pretty easy. Training those cattle, you know, we call it prowling through them. You know, you have a lot of cattle in a field or your ranch or whatever, and you just take that horse and prowl through them. You know, and of course the cattle are used to your horse, and
Yeah.
if you got a dog with you, or, you know, and then whenever you need to move them, they know the signals. You know, so you can handle lots of them by yourself.
But I think it's cool. I think it's cool that there's like a respect and appreciation for that way of life. And I think kind of to your point that it's hard to get away from because it's so good. I think people realize that. And if they don't have the opportunity, I don't have a ranch, but I am also outside people and I'm raising my kids to be outside people. And I'm so thankful to have the opportunity. Like one of my kids is down with my parents learning how to fix tractors and working on the land, you know, and I'm so thankful to have that opportunity. And I think that that's kind of behind one of the reasons that shows like that are so popular. Because if you don't know, you know, what it's like to get up and watch a sunrise out on big open lands like we get to, you know, it really is very, very special.
Yeah, or else you get in the dirt. You know, I like to see the kids in the dirt.
Always.
Yeah. You know, I've had to be in the office a lot, and my hands are too clean, but yeah, being outside in the wind, the dirt on your face, and rain or whatever, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like riding a horse across some country. It's good for the soul. It's good for the outside of you and good for the inside of you.
I would love to tell you about Ingenic Dental Studio here in town. Dr. Jake Motery is my family's dentist, and he and his staff give us just the best family dental experience. But his practice and expertise go so much further than my kids' cavities and my routine cleanings. Dr. Motery specializes in cosmetic and implant dentistry. I've seen some of the work he's done, and it is just gorgeous. It's nothing over the top, very natural looking, but with results that really change a person's whole look. So if you're looking for family or personal dental care, or for a more aesthetically enhancing experience, check out Ingenic Dental Studio online or at their location on Georgia next to Market Street and Steak Express. Okay, I'm back with Donnie Trammell. Donnie, this is part of the show I call 8 Straight. I've got 8 fast ones for you.
Okay.
When you think of Amarillo 10 years from now, what do you hope for?
Yeah, so I really hope to still have the local feel, you know, the local aspect, the feel of Amarillo, you know, all of our customers in the stores, that's what they are. They're just good Amarillo residents. And I hope we still have that local feeling years from now.
Mm-hmm. When was the last time you went to Paladuro Canyon?
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've been out there. I haven't had a whole lot of time since we started some of this, and of course the ranch takes, you know, sitting on the porch there is pretty good, but it's been a long time. I grew up out there. I think whenever we graduated high school, we actually went out there, a whole bunch of us kids, you know. And we actually got kicked out of Paladuro Canyon.
What do you have to do to get kicked out of the state park there, Donnie?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, all us high school, you know, graduates, you know, that was back in '82, so remember what those days are like.
Yeah, we can fill in those blanks. Sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
Other than wind, what does this area have too much of?
Traffic right now. Yeah, construction traffic.
Yep. And what does this area not have enough of?
You know, really recreation places for people. You know, we have Lake Meredith, but you know, we probably need a few more of those.
Mm-hmm. What's your favorite local building?
I guess, you know, thinking about the Santa Fe building, I've always admired that, always.
It is beautiful. And favorite local restaurant?
I'd have to say Green Chili Willie's.
Oh, good one.
You know, just because, I mean, I personally know them. You know, Margaret Glasscock, I rode a few horses for, you know, and then Jimmy out there, and then Pete, you know, I've known him for years. Actually, I sold Jimmy his first pickup. So, but it's always a consistent restaurant. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, that is good eating. That makes me curious. Do you guys provide for any restaurants in town?
No, we don't. So I'll try to answer it quickly.
That's all right.
Restaurants and grocery stores handle box beef. So when you handle box beef, you can pick up the phone and order a pallet of ribeye rolls. When you handle only carcass beef like we do, yeah, there's only about 12 ribeyes and a half of beef. And so it's hard to provide that for a restaurant. And not only that, demand from the general public's so high that we run out of stuff anyway. And the price is higher. A restaurant has really small margins, so they need it about as cheap as they can get it.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, you've got 4 hours to spend in Amarillo with someone who's never been here. What are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, trying to find somewhere to eat a good steak, that's pretty hard. I probably have to cook them one myself, but people are really interested in the Big Texan. It's really nostalgic. I actually, when I was in college, I drug a horse up there. They hired me to park cars. I had on my leggings.
On your horse?
Yeah, on the horse and everything. Had garters on my arms. They'd give me tips, and that was back about 1983 back then.
Oh.
But probably there, and then people are interested in feed yards. Once they drive by a feed yard and they see 80,000 head of cattle in there, they're like, oh my gosh, So letting them see something like that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that is quite the operation.
Mm-hmm.
On your steak comment, I think the funniest saying, I guess, like around here is like the best steak in Amarillo is in your backyard.
Yeah. I would see, and we hear that all the time.
Especially if it's homegrown beef.
Yes, that's right.
It's cool. What do you think people get wrong about Amarillo?
I think they get wrong that we're like your country hicks, because I talk to people that are in New York or Florida or somewhere, or even California, and they're like, wow, I didn't realize that about Amarillo, because we really are professional in Amarillo, and not just country hicks.
Yeah, and farming and ranching operations are very, very advanced and very technologically integrated, and the stuff y'all do, that's kind of an interesting consideration of its own, is how the technology has changed over
It has.
the time that you've been doing it. That concludes the 8 questions. I like to end my episodes by offering my guests the chance to endorse something. What would you endorse?
There's so much about Amarillo and Canyon. If you'll let me, I'll endorse all the hard-working small business owners, because you can have big businesses all you want to, but it's all these hard-working small business owners, that keep everything moving. I
completely agree. Donnie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I've really, really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, appreciate it. Enjoyed it.
Y'all keep making our food.
All
Thank
right,
you for that, too.
You betcha.
That concludes the episode. Thanks to Donnie Trammell for the interview. Thank you to Amarillo Venture Capital and Ingenic Dental Studio for supporting the podcast, and to Broderick Adams for editing every week. Executive producers on this episode are Jim and Barbara Whitten. And thank you for listening. This has been episode 456 of Hey Amarillo. My name's Skylar Gallup, and we hope you will listen again next week.